What is up, MFers? Today is a video that is going to help every angler that is watching this, and especially bass fishing anglers, because I'm going to show you the top 4 knots that every bass fisherman must know, and honestly, it's the only 4 that I think that you need to know, just my opinion. Let's dive in. So I got Osborne right here. We're about to go out back and do some fishing in the ponds. The biggest question that I get the most often is, what knot do you throw? What knot do I even tie? And that's something that, it's my fault. I made a video like this a long time ago, but I just don't take the time to get and show some knots. But this guy right here is learning knots so he can rig his own stuff up. And today, I figured I might as well show you guys the only 4 knots that I really ever throw when I'm out fishing. And it's a little bit different than what I did in the past after way more experience on the water. And I'm not just gonna show you like some super basic or easy knots. I'm gonna show you knots that are all simple, but they're very strong and very efficient for when I'm out on the water. This is all I use, guys. Okay, knot number 1, the knot that I tie the most often directly to my bait, and that is the San Diego jam knot. This is a very easy knot to tie, but it's flat out one of the strongest knots you could possibly use. We're gonna use something a little bit bigger here to give you guys a better idea than just using little tiny fluorocarbon line or something like that. But pretend this is our hook or our split ring, whatever we might be tying to. We're simply gonna go one time through, and then I'm gonna use my fingers back here to hold this loop. So we got this loop up here, and we're gonna hold it with our back finger, and then I'm just gonna make about 6 overhand knots over both of those tag ends, just like so. We're almost there, Ozzy. That's almost it, literally. We're gonna go back through the bottom loop of that tag end, and then this knot that we're holding up here, we're gonna go back up through that, like so. I like to hold the bait, I hold the tag, I hold the main line. It'll cinch up high like that. You're gonna wet it, both before you do that, of course, with twine. I'm not gonna need to wet our knot, right? And then we're gonna pull the main line and the bait, and it's gonna cinch down tight like that. And I like to pull all these knots almost to break strength. That's something I learned from the late great Aaron Martins. Very important, so the line digs into itself. Of course, you don't wanna break it or pull too hard, but getting a nice firm knot is very important. We'll cut it really close to the tag end. Ozzy, that is such a strong knot. I first learned of this knot when guys were talking about how it's the best knot for throwing giant swim baits because it can absorb the shock of throwing a 6 to 10 ounce bait. And I started throwing it with my lighter baits just as well, and it works extremely well for line that's all the way from 4-pound test up to 30-pound test fluorocarbon. And of course you can use it as braid line as well. I do recommend with most of these knots, if not all of them, if you're using braid, more of a tendency to slip, so make a few extra loops. But that's a very simple knot, and it's almost, it's the strongest knot that I have ever personally used. Okay, knot number 2 is going to be probably the most old school knot that can be used just like we just used that San Diego jam knot, but personally I throw it specifically for one of my favorite techniques, and that's the drop shot, and this is the Palomar knot. Palomar knot is very simple knot to tie as well, and it's very effective for throwing a drop shot bait. I'll show you why in just a second. So again, we'll double our line over, our main line, double it over just like that. And this is something that I learned a long time ago to make it a little bit easier. Or actually, we'll tie just one simple overhand knot like so. Got that, Ozzy? Don't want to cinch it down tight, just get it almost down. And then we'll take this loop. We're gonna go over the bait. This loop's barely big enough to go over the end of that screw. So you're gonna end up like that, and this is the important part. You're gonna wanna wet that down really nicely, and you're gonna end up with a nice tight knot. Now, of course, I'm gonna tie it a little bit longer so I can get, a 2-inch to 20-inch leader for my drop shot, which you'll get good at getting those knots, the tag end to be the right length of how you want it. You can always cut off more, so tie it a little longer at first. But if you're trying to drop shot, we'll say this up here is your main line and down here is where your weight's gonna be. We're gonna wanna take this tag end, go through the top of that loop down there, and we're gonna pull this knot. Now, if you had an actual fish hook, this knot is gonna ball up and wanna stop on top of it right there. but if you get a little bit of moisture in there, especially if you're using lighter line, almost all hooks will let this knot come through. You're gonna pull down until you hear a little snap, and that's gonna be that knot just popping right through that. And having the knot down right there on the bottom side of the drop shot hook, if the point was up like this on a hook, is gonna hold that bait perfectly horizontal in the water column as you're up here. That is very cliche, that is very overused, that you want your bait to be flat and straight, but it is so important with the drop shot bait. Trust me guys, you want your bait to be perfectly straight, and pulling that knot through is gonna be very, very important to do that. Knot number 3, this is a very important knot if you are flipping with a straight shank hook. Really, this is the only time I'm gonna use this knot, Ozzy. Straight shank hook. And I've gone back and forth mentally and with other anglers about if the physics of this actually makes sense to catching more fish, but it just works from using it. And so I'm not gonna argue the physics of something that I know just freaking works, and I'll explain in a second what I'm talking about, the physics of this, but this is gonna be the Snail knot. We're gonna take our main line. Of course, you're not gonna have an open hook eye like this. We're just gonna go through, we're gonna leave about 6 inches of main line. You're gonna pinch the line down here against the shank of the hook, and then you're gonna leave a little loop right there by holding it. And then you're gonna go overhand and work your way back up towards the main line. And usually I'll do 6 or 7 loops there. And then you're gonna take this end line right here and you're gonna go back through that loop that you're holding on to. I'll pull it a little bit tight. Now I'll hold onto this tag end against the hook, and I'll pull on that main line of the hook and cinch it down tight. Now, the physics of this is a little bit easier to see. Ozzy's playing with the catfish line. But basically the idea is when this hook gets bit by a bass, up above, eats the whole bait and the weight and everything, as it comes down, it's gonna hit that weight and shoot the front of the hook forward into the bass's mouth. Now let me tie it actually with a heavy flipping weight and a straight shank hook like I use to understand the physics of it. So here's the physics that I'm talking about right there, guys. So yes, the hook point does go forward, but you're also taking the hook point and you're sending it to the round bend of the fish's mouth too as it comes out. Now, that doesn't make much sense, but what does happen very often, how many of you guys have had a bite on a Texas rig and you set the hook and it's like you feel nothing and you come back with no bait? Well, that's because when a fish grabs the hook, their mouth is this direction and they didn't get the hook like this to get that point in the roof of their side or bottom of their lip. They grabbed it like this, pulled the whole bait, and the hook just slides out straight sideways. Now there's another trick for that as well. Maybe you guys have to comment, let me know if you want to see a trick so that doesn't happen to you anymore. But just by, getting that hook to move forward or pivot or rotate, I think even if it does catch up here and not get the point of the hook, it's gonna turn the whole system, and maybe that hook's gonna grab on the way before it goes out of the fish's mouth, basically is what I'm saying. So that is why I use the Snail knot. Okay, last but not least, let's do the last knot, Osborne. And we're gonna need this line right here for that as well. We are going to do my favorite connection knot. Everybody, or at least everybody should be using a braid to fluorocarbon leader, especially with your spinning rods. This is the one I use, and that is the crazy Alberto knot, or just the Alberto. I'm not really sure what makes it a crazy one. I don't know, imbalances, I guess, and hormones maybe. Basically, that's gonna be your connection line between your braid, your fluorocarbon, your mono, whatever you might use. I only use fluorocarbon generally for my leader, and unless I'm throwing like a pop-ar or a prop bait, something like that, I will throw a heavy mono up on the surface. I'm using this bright catfish line. Hopefully you guys can see this, but this line down here will demonstrate your fluorocarbon. You're just gonna double it over. This is excessive, you don't need 8 inches of line. You probably need at least 5 though. Double it over, we're gonna hold it tight. We're gonna take our braid. We're gonna go through that loop right there. And you need to have a little bit of coordination and grabbing skills and know where to grab. So, it doesn't matter which way you go through. When we come back through in a second, it will matter, right Oz? It's almost nap time. So, once you go through, pinch the braid and both ends of that fluorocarbon right there. You're gonna hold this down here with your pinky in your palm, and you're gonna take this braid and you can go overhand. And usually I do about 6 or 7 times up. At this point, you're gonna grab this line right here, the braid. You're gonna make a, you don't need to make a loop, but you need to hold it with this tag end and the main line of the fluorocarbon. And you don't need to hold these anymore either. You're gonna work your way back up the other direction. And you're gonna try to fit that braid in the grooves that it made and where there's a gap on the way up. It just lays down a lot smaller. Now this part's important, Osborne. You're gonna take this braid line, this tag end, and you're gonna go back through the same direction of the hole right there that it's going through already. Not the opposite, you're gonna go through the same. This is gonna be difficult to do with my unraveling line. But okay, we're back through. So here's what we got. We got a tag, a main, a tag, and a main. We're gonna grab all 4. We're gonna cinch it a little bit, and we're gonna grab the main and the main leader. And we're gonna cinch it all the way down. There it is, and then I will come down here. You wanna cut your fluorocarbon or your mono very close, and a little bit of tag is okay with your braid, because if it slips a little bit, you're not gonna come undone that way. Of course, it's not gonna be a giant, ridiculous looking knot like this when you're finished, because you're not gonna be using cord. But that's what it looks like. So, of course, I tie and have tied the FG knot. That's a great, great knot. It's a little bit smaller. It takes quite a bit longer to tie, in my opinion, than this, and I've had a lot of inconsistencies with it as well. It might be a personal issue, but I've had very little issues with the Crazy Alberto. Very, very strong. Again, cinch it down as tight as possible, because the braid digging into the fluorocarbon on those wraps is what's gonna keep it held up together without you needing to do any super glue or anything crazy like that. It's almost as small as the FG. I've used the uni to uni knot in the past when I first got going making these, and it's way bigger. And this is just the Crazy Alberto is just a great, great knot. All right, guys, that is the 4 knots that every bass fisherman must know. And what do you think? Should they leave a comment down below? Let us know what ones you have any questions about, or what ones that you like to tie that you think we missed. And me and Ozzy are gonna go rip a couple big heads out the pond, big dog. If you want more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. That lets me know that you want some more entry-level videos like this one. I had a blast filming it, and I love teaching people to go catch more fish. The knot is the most important thing. It is the start before we can start thinking about any type of bait. So don't skimp on your knots, don't skimp on your line, and you'll catch more fish. I'm out of here. Peace.